Hi, my name is Mangok Deng. I am customer local. I lead the South Sudan Youth Group, Wadayoyo, and I'm one of the, um, I'm part of Multicultural, um, Multicultural Service, Youth Network. Um, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and pay respect to our traditional owners and custodians, past and present, emerging of the lands of which this event is being held. The Jaja Warans and Jaran peoples. Our guest for tonight is Susan Yengi. She's calling in from Melbourne. We would like to express our respect to the Boran Boom Orans and Warwan people of the Eastern Cape Nations. Welcome to Your Voice, Your Vote. This is a series of events by Multicultural Services about democracy and voting in the upcoming council's election today. I'm proud to be joined by Susan Yengi, who is running for a seat on the Maribyrnong Council. Susan is from South Sudan, moved to Melbourne in 2007. She's also the former CEO of the Social Studio, Social Enterprise and Fashion School for the Refugees. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks for having me here.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Why have you decided to run for a seat on the Maribyrnong Council?
So I'm really interested in addressing some local issues affecting my local community and hoping to contribute to that. But the other major issue, and I guess the main reason why I'm running, is about diversity and representation. Now, I come from a, I guess, Maribyrnong community is a very diverse community. We've got like 40% of our residents are born overseas. So I'm really interested in making sure that, marginalized community groups have an opportunity to have a say and engage with council on, local issues and things that are important to them, but also just being able to contribute to their local communities. And given that, we have such a diverse community, I'm really interested in making sure that, our council is very inclusive and it represents the diversity of our community.
Right on, right on. What issues are you passionate about advocating for?
So locally, I'm really interested in, there's a lot of overdevelopment going on in Maribyrnong, and I'm really interested in, looking at how council undertakes its future planning. At the moment, I think the biggest concerns is with the development that's going on. A lot of it, there's practically on the ground, it's not quite suitable for a lot of our neighbourhoods, and you see that with the local roads, the streets, etc., that are quite impacted by this development. You've got, someone knocks down one house and they build 3 or 4 townhouses, for instance, and then you might have, 10 to 12 people move in that one block of land. Now, if you think about it, the impact is that you've got all of a sudden, you might have 10 people, and out of those 10 people, you've got 5 extra people who have cars that are parked on the street. We have a parking issue in our area with there being not a lot of parking, and the more development that goes up that's quite inappropriate, the more it affects our local traffic and also parking. The other thing is the impact on our open spaces, which is something that I'm advocating for, making sure that we can protect our local communities. And ultimately, I really don't want to, end up in a community that looks a bit like a concrete jungle, really. I think it's really important to have a lot of open spaces for families and young people to access. And with a lot of overdevelopment that's happening, I feel that we're going to lose that. So that's one thing. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is about the diversity and community engagement, really wanting to make sure again that, our local communities are well connected and engaged with council. I think over the years, they've probably struggled a little bit to engage with some of those smaller communities. We have quite a big African community in this council area. And I know that there's been some challenges in engaging with our community as well. So as someone that's worked with a lot of multicultural communities, I feel that I would be able to bring, I guess, that strength and experience of mine to make sure that, you know, we really connect with a lot of these smaller communities and have them contribute to our community and, I guess, the future of it, really.
All right. Why is it important for Africans, Australians, to get into local politics by voting or becoming a candidate themselves? So why is it so important for us to get into it?
So I think, I'm sure you'd be very familiar with some of the challenges that have affected our communities over the last few years. And, you know, that some of that has been also one of the, I guess, the reasons or things that has pushed me to want to consider getting involved, because for a long time I've avoided politics and engaging in that respect. But really, as someone who's very interested in social change and looking at opportunities to better communities, I think, and as an African, we have seen, especially, you know, you would have seen with the towers that were locked down in Flemington in July during the COVID situation, how decision makers make decisions about communities. And if you're not part of that decision-making process, then what you have is people making decisions for you and making decisions about you, but without actually talking to you and consulting you on what the real issues are for you, or, you know, exactly what it is that you need, and making sure that those decisions that are made are relevant. So I've experienced, you know, over the years, decision makers making decisions about our community, for instance, and putting certain policies in place which just isn't really relevant at all. And the best way for our community to combat that, for example, is to make sure that we are a part of the decision-making process. Now, council is just one way of being, you know, involved in that decision-making process, but I've decided I want to actively engage and be a part of that process, because I no longer want people making decisions that impact me and that are about me without engaging me and without me being part of the process. So it's really important, you know, for our community to know that so long as you want to see change and you want people to start making decisions about you, it's never going to happen if you don't participate in the process. And that is why voting is very important, but that is also why it's really important for people to think about how else they can actively be involved in the political process, because it's only through this process that we're going to be able to push for the change and push for the needs of our community overall, and make sure that those who are responsible making the decisions actually create policies that are relevant for us. But it's even better if we're on that table with them and making those decisions, because at least we can be directly there and instructing, you know, and putting input into how those policies are created.
All right. Okay. What advice would you give young people from South Sudanese and broader Africans community about being involved in communities?
So like I was just explaining before, I think, you know, we've been here for a really long time in Australia, and again, since 2007, in particular in Victoria, you know, there's been quite a lot of racial profiling all around Australia, but in Victoria in particular, it's been very, very intense. There's been a lot of racial profiling. We've seen a rise in, you know, racism, discrimination, a whole lot of things. I think that, you know, as I'm going to speak as an African, you know, all these years, it's been really disappointing, because I feel like I've come here, sure, and I'm really grateful to be here, but I work and I pay my taxes. I volunteer and I participate in community programs. I'm actively contributing to this community. Yet, you know, there continues to be a lot of these negativity that's projected out there through media, through politicians even, that affects me. And it affects my self-esteem. It affects, you know, I've seen the change in which, you know, people look at you, the way people treat you, etc., which isn't fair. And I think, you know, for our community, it is time that we step up and we do something about it. There's a lot of people out there that are advocating for change in different ways. But like I said, the only way to really see real systemic change is for all of us to be actively involved in the decision-making process. So my advice is, if there is a way for us to engage, if you're a young person out there and you want to see things change, the best way to do that is to be involved in the decision-making process. And I think something like running for council, you don't have to want, to be a politician. I'm not a politician, and I never wanted to be a politician. It's not about, running for state or federal either, but council is the closest government level to the grassroots community. And if you want to make significant change in your community, the best way you can do that is by being on council, for example, because they're responsible for a whole lot of things, just even including the health and well-being of people, including the facilities that are available to your community. If you look around, I live in the western suburbs, and particularly in certain neighbourhoods in the western suburbs, you look around and look at the facilities that are available for young people. There isn't, there's some areas where they don't even have, like playgrounds that people can go access. How does things like that affect young people, like not even having sporting, for instance, facilities for people to access? All these things contribute to, I guess, the development of young people, but it also affects them in particular ways. And, if you want to change what's going on in your neighbourhood, you can do that by being on council or by voting for somebody who that is going to actively work to better you and your local community.
Okay, let's say you get a seat.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the first thing you would like to see change within your community?
That's such a loaded question. Unfortunately, I get asked this question all the time, and I'm like, there is not one thing. There's like at least 3 things that I want to start, but all at the same time, because they're all really equally important. Yeah. So I think what I want to do is, first I want to find a way to create a roundtable and sit down with people and actually really invite all the different community groups in and have a conversation with them about what's going on within their communities locally, and what help do they need. That's the first thing, is understanding what people need, and then from there developing ways in which you can support them and basically fulfill some of those needs if possible. The other thing I really want to do is fix our local roads and other infrastructure. So there's a lot of infrastructure here that needs to be fixed, so I want to work on that. So yeah, I guess the 2 main things is consult with the community and bring the community together and have a very open conversation, and then the other one is about getting started on fixing some of our local roads and infrastructure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate having you and you joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for waking up early for this, and I wish you the best and good luck. And probably keep my ears open. Yes. See how you go.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
No worries.
All right.
Hey, Kadi. What you want? What you want? What I died. Cái nên we been work or how we ba la we the quên còn để pen cái này local boring để cái nó load pen cái này pen tiar của we chan của nai round that kia để do keeping cái bên nuôi đến thì nuôi yên của bia cái của bia đây cái này lo kada punya pen cái này ku quên your local council election broloi kadang broloi achiro gol already na ra mon ki chwet ka na ta chero already kala ka chep abro gol kolonin detem pen tiari ku gobato kolonin tiaro ku dia pentiar kenik ku betul 6 saratam te so na saratam te ku Friday kun day 23 pentiar ka gitu kunin tero ku dia ka saratam ka gitu ka je ku ngan ki chwet ka ta ka le ba na ta ku jam ne ken chi bra lakin ka ram pe ku wan ka chwet kala ke la ba man tap ko wede corona virus ruon kana je gre na chi chu wa chi ka ga na chi wel wa chu re chan bi a to jin ba pa nu mel bo na je to jin ka wi chan ko na wala mar kayo ko yin lu register chan bi ba ya chwet ka wi chan ko bala tin chimen na era bani go ra ka son ka wi ba me bo lo cha na cha ga ke yu pa gram ko ka tin ngo ki gram no ki ben ka rang e ben chimen de ka kwani ko lo chimen bil kar ba e ke ben ka ke ban kia tene ram ta re ka de ban mel bo so na te ban ko ta ngai to ko bo wa tin ya te go no kan council your local government election so to go no kia na da yo ka ngai to ko kwenta ni raun ko na raun da ko ko jo ka ran ne hun da ko ta ba ka yin raun da ma ko yin ta ka yin ka chol ku no din na cha ga ka ila tene Multicultural Service chan bu gina kon para kon ti kene balaga so e ban kan de blok kan ne ke na ta ba be katin batin ko gre timen pan re tin ku ren ka ta yako ku na cha ban ga ka yo ngan ni na ta ngan ni karen ko ke ka abu da tin ku ko ye gol mi ran to ran ta ko to ku rube gatin na kala number so number ye gatin na ta gada ran no ta ro bin chat ko ye ganna ba to te ne number 1 to do na ran ta yen chi ni ara pa yen akar ka ita no 11 so ye gol from number to tiar ko to so e mai tapia so ba ta ga de na anything book up law in your local council around that I think well ka ta ko na cha cho chwet ko ba de tumen won ko da gam ko da ban ri ya ki chirikan so ki chirikan ay ngai to tumen ay ngai to ko de ki chirikan kan abtin ada abtin ka ka tiok to ku tiok kan utakan etane ka etane yiren ko gatten etane lu sign ku ci ka de gatten ku jala na da de gatten ka ci ren ko ka takan so ren ko ya gat pintan mi altan etane lu sign den ku jala de ada da to ka jota kan ada da am sama bantaro ku ci kan so ku ci kan atakan ya so na ta lo ka jokan kan ban ka jo áo tin nãy đã áo tin nên có bây giờ là học tin coi post office của cái đằng tin đang lo cái chuyện là thế này à của là cái chân mas của không ngồi cái chuyên môn cái đằng cái chân là cái chuyện của thảo tin của gia rồi chỉ có những thằng bạn mạch hoặc bạn có bao là bạn là của khai tin chuyện tin cái chuyện tin bạn là coi thảo việc của bạn này thì cái này cái bên ngoài chẳng cái rằng này cho lỗi rồi đấy anh chỉ chuyện có phải là chẳng có chuyện có là khái chuyện của những rằng chỉ cái đừng khác bên ngoài cái gì chuyện cái in là rằng là chỉ rằng cái của cái đi bên báo tục cái chấp cái này nó có lỗi đó của cái này bên ngoài video kan itu ko wecha kale ko lo ko chalo ram ke ko pa de a chan go te chiwo ban de pan ne chiman pan ro and we to make sure ram en bu bai pan ni wa tin ba bu mat ram ta cha de ko ram ta na de ke chiwo jor ko la te ko chala de ka ngi yo tin ba che lui tập cái này có lỗi cái này cái tập tính của với chắc lấy của nhà này thôi và